Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is emerge. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways that we use this verb. The first way you might hear emerge used is to mean to move and come into view. Right? So we might think of something that is hidden, but something changes, maybe it moves, and now we're able to see it. We could use this verb to describe that action. A second way you might hear emerge used is to mean to become apparent, important, or prominent. And when I think of prominent, I really think of this third definition of becoming known, well known. So for these two definitions, let's take the example of an artist, maybe a singer or a songwriter. This person has been writing and performing for many years, but is not well known. All of a sudden, her songs become very popular. We can describe she has emerged as a great singer or songwriter. A fourth way you might hear emerge used is to mean to recover from or survive a difficult situation. Um, when I hear difficult situation, I can't help but think of the pandemic. And there's a lot of talk about how we will sort of recover from the challenges of these past 2 years, what we've done to survive. I'm going to have an example later that touches on this connection here, how we recover from it. A fifth way you might hear emerge used is connected to biology. When an animal breaks out of its shell or cocoon, again, we will use this particular verb to describe that action. You should know that emerge is a regular verb. To make the progressive tense, I'm going to drop the E and then add ing to form emerging. The past tense and participle forms of this verb are made with our regular ending, but we have a verb that already ends in E, so we're not going to have two E's then a D, just a single ed ending there. Our base verb, emerge, ends in this voiced J sound. So our past tense ending is going to make a D sound. It should sound like this: emerged, emerged. Okay. Now, I do have a couple phrasal verbs to point out. They're going to tie back to some of the earlier definitions we looked at, but the first one we'll discuss is emerge as. This means to begin to exist or to begin to have power or influence. An example of this might be, who has emerged as the next leader of the political party? Okay, so we want to know which person here is starting to have power or influence. Another phrasal verb you might hear is emerge from. This can have a couple different meanings. We're going to look at two. The first is to leave or come out of something. So this really ties back to the first definition we looked at moments ago. An example sentence: after hibernating during the winter, most male bears will emerge from their dens in mid-March. Okay, so they're going to leave or come out of the place where they had been hibernating. A second way we can use emerge from is to mean to come to the end of a difficult period or experience. Okay, so this is tying back to that fourth definition of the main verb. An example here: will you emerge from the pandemic as a more compassionate person? Right? So once we reach that end, right, are you going to treat people differently in a kinder way than maybe you did before March 2020? Now let's continue using our verb of the day in a couple different verb tenses. Today we're going to practice the present perfect and the simple future and focus on using be going to. Let's start with the present perfect. We can use this verb tense to talk about an action that started in the past and continues into the present, Or we can use it to describe something that occurred at an unknown point or an unknown period of time in the past. To make the present perfect, we need two parts. And we need to pay attention to our subject. If our subject is I, you, we, or they, we're going to use have and then the participle form of the verb. But if our subject is he, she, or it, we'll use has and then the participle form of the verb. We can see this in the example sentence. She has emerged as the new team leader and star of the league. Okay. So I would say this particular sentence connects back to maybe our second or third definitions of this particular verb, emerge. We're maybe talking about an athlete here who's become important as a leader, who's become more well known as among all the players in the league. Now let's talk about making a negative present perfect sentence. To do this, we need to put not after have or has. Then we'll have the participle form of the verb. You might hear some speakers use the contraction form, haven't or hasn't. You're free to use whichever is sort of easiest for you. An example here. The butterfly hasn't emerged from its cocoon yet. Okay, so here we have a negative sentence, and I have added a picture because this might be, we might have some new ideas or new words here for some folks. But if you look at this picture here and here, we can see the cocoons, right? And at some point they will break out, right? And we will have a butterfly. So, but they haven't broken out yet. Okay? Next, let's look at making a yes or no question in the present perfect. To do this, we're going to start with have or has, whichever form matches our subject, and the subject comes next. Then we're going to have the participle form of the verb. Here's an example of that. Have new concerns emerged? Right? So here I might think of kind of becoming known. Becoming important as well could apply here. So new issues, new problems, are they now being brought to people's attention? Next, let's look at making sentences in the simple future using be going to. Again, we need to pay attention to our subject. If our subject is I, my next word is going to be am. If my subject is you, we, or they, it will be are. And if my subject is he, she, or it, I'll use is. Okay, so I'm going to use the form of be that matches my subject. Then I'm going to use going, to, and the base verb. Okay, an example here. New variants of COVID-19 are going to emerge at some point. It's just a matter of time. Now, I heard a doctor on a news channel say something along these lines, and it made me sad to think about. But this person was making a prediction about what was going to happen in the future. Now, to make a negative sentence in the simple future, we need to insert not after our be verb. Okay, so we're going to have am, is, or are, then not, then going, to, and the base verb. Here's another example. We aren't going to emerge from the pandemic for a long time. The same doctor said this sentence as well. It made me sad, but I thought it was a great example of how to use this. So this person is saying we're not surviving or recovering from this event, unfortunately, for still a longer period of time. Lastly, if you want to ask a yes or no question in the simple future, we're going to start with be, whichever form matches our subject, and the subject comes next. Then our pattern goes back, going, to, and the base verb. Here's an example. Is more evidence going to emerge during the trial? So with this particular definition, again, I would think back to become known. Is it, are there going to be things shared that we might find surprising because we hadn't heard of them previously? Now, let's spend a little time looking at some words that are related to our verb emerge. The first word we're going to look at is the noun emergence. This can be used a couple different ways. We're going to look at two. The first way to use this noun is to refer to the process of coming into view or becoming exposed. Right? So this definition really ties back to the first definition of the verb. An example of this might be, there have been 500,000 deaths worldwide since the emergence of Omicron. Right? So since this variant became known, since it was discovered, right, we unfortunately have had hundreds of thousands of deaths throughout the world. A second way you might hear emergence used is to refer to the process of coming into being or the process of becoming important. An example of this, the emergence of cryptocurrency has changed investing. Right? So, cryptocurrency was not widely known 10 years, 20 years or more ago. I'm not exactly sure even when it was created, but this idea is relatively new. So we can talk about this process of coming into existence and becoming well known. Another related word that you might hear is the adjective emergent. This is describing something that is in the process of coming into being or becoming prominent. An example of this might be, these new devices are still using emergent technology. So this is not established technology that has been around for a long time. This is pretty new. Another word that I'm sure many of you are familiar with is the noun emergency. Many times when we use this, we're referring to a serious and unexpected, possibly even dangerous situation that requires some immediate action or immediate help. An example of this might be, you should call 911 in an emergency. A second way we might use this noun is to refer to something that is used during the course of an emergency or that unexpected dangerous situation. An example here, where's the emergency exit? And most buildings are going to have a certain way to exit in case there was a fire or other disaster that required us to leave the space as quickly as possible. I want to thank the ever fantastic suggestions from Robert. This was another one of his requested verbs, and I really appreciate all the comments and new subscribers. Thank you all so much for watching. Feel free to recommend other verbs you'd like to see in the future. I hope you have a great day.